So to start with, the code and the presentation is on GitHub, and my Twitter account is Habrah. You could start with that, but let's look at this. So our agenda, it will be just set up some expectations, quick review, then there will be a lot of code. So my expectation, at least, is that you do know JavaScript. And I will tell you about the interesting features in EcmaScript 6, but not everything, just what I think is interesting. So these are my personal choices. OK, please interrupt me and ask me any question at any time. Don't wait to the end, please. So what's EcmaScript? ECMA is an acronym, the European Computer Manufacturers Association. This is their own ANSI, basically, their answer to ANSI. And EcmaScript has several other names, or known as Harmony, or EcmaScript Next, or just the new version of JavaScript. And it is scheduled to be released in mid-2015. So currently, there is no environment that has all features of EcmaScript 6. Some browsers support it, some server-side compilers support it, but we don't have any single platform that has everything. Among browsers, Firefox 36, which is the developer edition, has everything. Sorry, has the latest and more than any other browser. If you want to do a compiler at the back end, 6.5 is probably one of the good options. So what does EcmaScript 6 add? Classes. So now finally, we have a way to define a consistent way classes instead of each library defining their own. We will have modules and module loader, so no more require or whatever, something like that. It is going to support promises, part of the language, and proxies. I'll talk about proxies later. Iterators and generators. These are, I mean, who knows Java or C#? So you probably know at least what is an iterator. We'll talk about it. So it is something that allows you to iterate over a collection or over a list. Generators are things that generate items. So it allows you to create basically lazily evaluated lists. Arrow functions, this is just a shortcut enhancement, like syntactic sugar of declaring functions. And it has a neat solution for the block scope. You know, in JavaScript, where you define a variable, it could be outside its block, but it is in the function scope. So we have a solution for that. Also, this is neat, tail calls optimization. This is if you are going to do a lot of recursion, it will be valuable. However, currently, there is not even a single implementation that supports tail call optimization. We'll see. I hope it will be available in 6 months, so we'll see. It added also a bunch of other data types like map, set, weak map, etc. And there is Restructuring, which we'll talk about it. I don't want to explain it too much here. So let's look at code. So to run the code, I'm going to run Firefox Developer Edition. This is version 36. And one way to experiment with running code, you go to Tools, Web Developer, and Scratchpad. So here you could type some JavaScript. So basically, I'm going to go between Scratchpad, the console. Can you see this in the back, the console? Yes, all right. And the code. All right, so let's start with the simplest thing first. There is support for multi-line strings now. So notice this. So you could have a string that spans multiple lines without having to do plus or whatever tricks you used before. Notice, though, that the string marker is the backquote or the tick. You see that? So just be careful with that. And if I just run this to just prove to you it is a string, notice here I printed the type of the variable a, and it is a string. Now, multi-line strings are not just multi-line strings. They support also string interpolation. So let me show you this example here. So this is basically poor man template. So say I have a variable name and another variable year of birth. I could create this string, and it gets evaluated automatically. You see? Do you see what I'm saying here? So we have now a basic template as part of the language. So, all right. So the second thing I like you to know about is they added also another keyword, const, to define a constant. There's no point of talking too much about it. Now, they also added let. So let is very similar to var, except what you define in the let has a block scope. So let's say we run this code, or up from here, from the, what will happen? A, damn it, here, I should have said A. Let's run it instead of my guessing. So let's run this again here. There is an error saying B is not defined because, see, it didn't proceed. Do you see what I know the font here is too small to see, but I can't make it bigger on this here. Pardon? You could read it? Okay. So the point I'm trying to make is variables that you define with let has to, is available only inside the block scope, inside the curly brackets here. All right? The other thing here with, yes?
If you were to define the variable let outside of the block, say in the larger body of the code, it would be available?
Of course. It is inside, it is the standard what you expect from static languages scope definition.
So you think that's going to become a best practice?
Well, I prefer to have scope inside the block most of the times. I'm not saying all the time, but this kind of makes me think less. When you are using var, you have to be careful because it may be its scope is inside the function rather than inside the block. So it is easier to detect the scope.
Can you override the flag right now?
No. Let's try it. So here, and we don't need these. If I say flag equal false, all right, and run it, you see you're getting an error saying invalid assignment to a const. Yes?
If you had, outside of that block scope, if you had declared B, so var B equals something, and then you did let inside of the block, are you overriding?
Oh, you mean you do it var and then you do let on it?
Yeah.
I don't know. Let's try it. I haven't thought of that, so this is interesting. So let's see here. I say var b. We'll do it here directly. So var b equal 4. Okay? Is that what you are thinking about? And let's run it. Redeclaration of const flag.
You got to move your console log.
My console log. So no, there is no console log. I'm running this here.
You have to save it before you run it?
No, you don't. So, and let's do this here. If true, okay. No errors. And let's see console dot log, and we are interested in B, right? So the let.
Inside the block.
Oh, inside the block. All right. So let's clear this. Okay. So usually I consider this incorrect programming to do var and yeah, but if you just want to hack. So anyway, next thing is no hoisting for stuff that, do you guys know what's variable or function hoisting? Okay, so for stuff you define with let, there is no hoisting. So now if I could access C, notice here, I tried to access C before it was declared, and that will print undefined. However, if I try to do that with D, which is declared with let, I get an error. So there is no hoisting. One really useful place where I find let useful is when I'm doing a for loop with an index. I really like to use let here instead of a var, because this forces the I to be declared only or visible only in the scope here. It's kind of less possible bugs. So this is the scope thing. And okay, let's talk about functions. So in JavaScript, we used to have 2 ways of declaring functions, and now we have 3. So this is the standard old way of declaring a function. You say add, you give it 2 arguments, and you return something. Or you could declare it here, and you assign the function definition to a variable. So we know that. This is what is added in EcmaScript 6. So you could say var add 3 equals, and here is the parameters of the function, and here is the body of the function. Notice I don't have to put function, nor do I have to put return. You could conceive, if you choose, you could have multiple lines here, but this format, I find it useful mostly if I have just, I want to pass an anonymous function to a callback or something. This syntax is very handy. So let me show you an example of how you use it. Suppose you have an array of numbers, and you want to create an array that is the square of each of them. So we know how to do that. Or do you guys know what's the map function on the array? Anyone needs elaboration? Okay, so map expects a function, and so this is the old standard way, but you could do it now this way. So this is, in my mind, this is more readable and just easier to understand. So, and the other thing that's added with this, with the arrow function, is the lexical scoping of this. So suppose you have this object, and I want to access inside here. I have a function which is a which is trying to reference this dot color. What do you think will happen if I do this? So I'm trying to say, give me the color of E1 and the color of E2. It is not going to work. And usually the trick around that in JavaScript, you declare something like that, you'll have a reference to this, and you use this inside here. So you call it, sometimes you call it self. I mean, most people call it either that or self or whatever. Okay, so let's try to run this thing here. So notice the first one, when I try to access this dot color, I get undefined. The second one works. This is the standard way. However, if you use the arrow function, you could just use this dot color and it knows. So this is in the context of this object here. So you don't have to say that and stuff like that. So this is kind of a simplification of. Is this making sense? Can you?
Work to do with the arrow function?
Yes. This is with the arrow functions. Can you still hear me in the back? Okay. Another feature, this is simple, and so we're going to get progressively more complicated. You guys have seen this before. Suppose I have an array, and I do for I in array. What does it print usually? It prints the index. So if I have this array, and I do this type of loop, this is the classic old way, it is going to print 0, 1, 2. Now, most of the times, you really don't care about 0, 1, 2 in this context. You care about A, B, and C. So they added this for loop for I of array. So this loops on the values rather than the index. So this is another nicety. All right. Iterators. How would you want to, so I just showed you now, we could do for I of an array. But suppose you want to create your own data type that allows for of. The solution is to create what's called iterator. And here I'll show you an iterator. Do not think too much about the semantics yet. I'll explain it later. But the idea here is, suppose you declare your own object, whatever it has, and you're going to declare a member on this object with this key, symbol.iterator, okay? And that has a function. That is a function. And in it, you return another object that has next. Next will return each value. So don't worry too much about the symbol.iterator for now. Just think about what's inside the next function. So next function, I'm going to return odd numbers. So it will loop, and each time you call it, it will return n plus 2. So we start with -1. When we say for odd of odds, the first time it will call next, it will be -1 plus 2, that's 1. And here I'm just adding a safety check. I don't want to return forever. And then I have to return an object. So this is another thing you have to notice. For the iterator, you return an object that has 2 values. Done, which is a flag, true or false, and the value you want to return. And now, if I do that, I could loop on the odds object using for of. So let me show you. So notice it is returning. So notice the iterator itself doesn't have a for loop or any loop structure. It just knows to give you the next value. We're going to talk about this odd thing here later. Notice this is unusual in JavaScript 5 or EcmaScript 5. This is, but we'll talk about it now we're going to make it even more complicated. So this probably is the hardest part to understand in the presentation. So EcmaScript 6 added a new syntax for something called generator. And you declare it like this, function star. So this is new. In EcmaScript 5, this will cause an error, basically. So, and it added a new keyword, yield. And notice here what we are trying to do. This is a function that will loop until we reach our max. And every time it will yield odd. So this is the generator. It generates numbers, basically. Generator is something that generates values or things. So it could be numbers, it could be strings, it could be anything you choose to. notice though, this generator doesn't generate everything in advance. It generates a new value every time you call it. It is not like you create a whole array and then you use it. So now I get a reference to the odd generator and loop on it using the off for loop. So notice here. So how does it work? The first thing this executes, we have a reference to generator. We say for odd of odds, this will call this function and will come here until it reaches yield, and yield will return to you an odd number, which we print it. And then when second time of the for loop, it goes back to the line after the yield. It will increment the odd number by 2 and continue looping on the for loop, the while loop, comes to yield again. It is generating it has now the new value of odd. It will yield it, which means it will come back to here. So there is flip-flopping between yield and the for. So is this clear? Okay, let's see. So and let's run it and show you. So this did the same thing as we did with the iterator, except the syntax here, I think, is simpler than what we had the iterator. Now, a question comes, why would you use a generator? I mean, aside from its just complicated syntax, maybe it is cool, but what's a good use case? I mean, one thing I thought of is, suppose you have a large string, it represents some text file, and you want to break it line by line. The classic way we do it is we take it, we convert it into an array, and then we process each line. The problem with that is when you convert it to array, your memory now is duplicated. You have your original string, and you have an array of all your lines. So there's increase in memory consumption. However, here, you don't have to do that. You could just figure out one line and return it. Then next time, return the second line, and so forth. So this allows you to write tokenizers, basically, in an easy way. All right. So far, so good, guys? All right. So I keep asking because I can't see in the back. The lights are too strong. So if you're trying to give me a sign, please make sure I see you. So now proxies. Anyone here knows Ruby? Method missing? You know what's method missing? That's it here, but I will explain. So, except here in JavaScript, in EcmaScript 6, it is method and field missing support. So let's talk about it. Imagine you want to create an object that always must have a field in it. Let's say it is an entity that must have an ID field. Even if it is not there, you want to enforce it. You want the system to create an ID field for you if it is not there. So here's how you do it. We declare something called, whatever. It could be just a variable, but we need an object that has a function called get. It takes 2 arguments, a target and property name. So look at this implementation here. If the property name exists in the target, I return it. This is easy syntax. If it is not, I check if the property name is ID, and if it is ID, if I'm trying to get the ID property on the object, but it is not there, I'm going to make up one and set it on it and return it. So let's look at an example, then we could come back here. Suppose I have an object called user, and it has a name cat. I'm going to call new proxy. This is the new proxy. This is Java EcmaScript 6, and pass it user and handler. Okay. Now, if I have this, if I say user log user.name, what do you think will print? Cat. Now if I say print user.id, what will it print? It will print ID underscore 1. Even though user doesn't have an ID property. So now if I try to print user.age, it will be incorrect. So let's try that. So notice here, ID now is defined even though I didn't specifically define it on the user object. So if you're going to try to write any intelligent type of objects or things that are somewhat self-aware of their context, this proxy could be helpful. So here we are implementing what you may call field missing, but you could also support function missing. So now another possible usage for this is, suppose you want to define like namespace for your code. You say sometimes say object name 1 dot object name 2 dot object name 3. For example, it could be your company name dot project name dot whatever widget you are writing. This could be your namespace. We do that many times in JavaScript. One way to do that basically is you use a library that does that for you. Call some namespace function that it will create it for you. However, we could use the proxy to implement that. So if I have var x is an object and say x.y.z.w equals hello, what do you think will happen if I just do that? These two lines, 3 and 4, if I run them, what do you think will happen? You get an error, of course. Y is not defined. I mean, okay, let me prove it to you in case you are doubting. See, it says x.y is undefined. Okay. Now, one way to do that, to do x, is to go do this. X equal, open parentheses, y colon, and you start a new object, z colon, start a new object, and this will do it. Do you see any problem with this if I follow this approach? Is that okay? The highlighted section, do you think this is okay? Exactly, it could override any values that are already in in y or z if they were there. So one possible way to handle that in a very neat way is to use this proxy concept to create a proxy handler. You do this. Sorry. So let me show you the proxy handler here. I'm going to create a property handler that whenever you try to access a property on an object, if it is not declared, we define it and add it. And it does that for each access member. So let's do this. So here I say var object equal a new proxy on an empty object with this property handler. And then I say object.ab.c is hello. Let's see this here. So what do you think will happen when I run it? What will be obj? So let's see. So obj now has an a. If I click on it, okay, here it has b. That c. You see. So this simple function handled this type of creating nested members in an easy way without having to do it yourself. Any questions?
Are you sure that we did not override b here?
I say, look at line 20. I'm saying if property name already exists, I just return it. if it is not there, it is line 21, I create a new object and assign it to B. Is it making sense?
So can you demonstrate that if you had set some property further up the hierarchy that it wouldn't have been wiped out by that?
Okay. So let's try to do it. So we are here. Let's do it here. So I create obj, and you want me to say obj dot a is something different, or or
Z.
see, because now obj is a proxy, has a proxy handler. Everything in its children will be smart enough. You see what I'm saying? But I'm trying to think of a scenario where what you...
It was in the original object, so that first argument is a proxy, if you had already defined A.
Here?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, let's do that. So here, if I have A, and it will have, say, x equal... Okay? And this, so we're going to have, it should maintain the x. B is not defined because now A is not a proxied object. But hold on.
Say A and then B.
Say,
Change the X to a B.
so I have obj.
No, the X change it to a B. What a word.
No.
Instead of X colon whatever, try B colon whatever.
We're here.
I don't think that's good.
Okay, let's run it. So now here, it is running, but I don't think that's what you are asking for. I'm trying to find a scenario where we have a value in a child of obj. So a child of obj is A. It has a value, and but this is okay. We could come to the code afterwards. So let me finish this, and if you are interested, we'll look at it. So we are in, now I'm not suggesting that you do this and take this to production. Do test it, please. There is 0 test here. So I'm just trying to explain to you the idea. You could implement it better than I, but this could be one way. So now promises. Do you guys know what's a promise in JavaScript? So think this way. You have an AJAX call, and you don't know how long it takes. It may take 5 milliseconds. It may take 5 seconds. You don't want your code to block until the AJAX call is finished. So usually you put a callback and say, when it is done successfully, do this. That's the old way of, say, jQuery. There's another way. When you make the call, it returns to you a promise object. And you say, when you get that, you define, when this object has finished successfully, do this code. So it's just slightly nicer syntax and more understandable than callbacks. The challenge here, I'm trying to write code without using any other libraries except EcmaScript 6. So here, I'm not using any AJAX. And I wanted to simulate a delay. So suppose I have a function called sleep, and it waits for some number of seconds. Please do not do this in any production. You don't do that. OK? So I'm mimicking something that takes some time to execute. And now I have a function that, say, finds a guy. It waits 100 milliseconds, and then it returns an object that has a flag, bad, yes or no, with probability 50-50. OK? So I'm trying to find all the bad guys in JavaScript. OK? So So I have this function now. Let's see how we create a promise. We have a new object called promise. This is JavaScript, EcmaScript 6. The promise takes a function as an argument, which the function has two parameters, resolve and reject. So let's see what happens. Inside this function, I'm going to call my slow function, find guy. It will return to me an object. If it is a bad guy, I resolve it. If it is a good guy, I reject it and return the guy is okay. All right? I really stretched my mind here to find meaningful example, but I couldn't. So, all right. So we have this promise. Now notice this nice syntax. I say promise dot then use the arrow function. So I know this find bad guy is going to resolve successfully only if it finds bad guys. So I say if it is bad guy, I'm going to do console.warn bad guy. If it is rejected, that is caught by catch, and I will just print the information about the guy. Okay, so let's run it and come back to it after that. And so first time I run it, it says the guy is okay. Let's see, verify the randomness of JavaScript random. Oh, the second one is a bad guy, and so forth. Is this making sense? Now there is something weird here, by the way, with catch, dot catch. You know, catch is like a reserved word in the try. So because I'm using here just a pure text editor and I'm running it inside the Scratchpad, it is okay. But most likely if you are running anything like a lint on your code, it may give you a warning on the catch. So you have to do something about it, define it in a different way. I'm not going to diverge there, but I'm just warning you. If you are using anything like JSLint, it may give you a warning here. Okay. Are the promises clear?
Is there any concept of a finally clause?
Finally is no. Well, this is a promise. Either it fails or succeeds. And I want to here show you some. By the way, if you notice, by the way, everything I showed you here is working in Firefox so far. And if you are interested in its code to see examples in the documentation, sorry. Oh, I don't have Wi-Fi and I don't want to set it now. So anyway, Mozilla has full documentation of everything I showed you here. Okay, we'll come back to references later. Just I want to show you, so you could look at these anytime you like. All right, something else added in EcmaScript 6, it is destructuring. The easiest example is this. You say var array of a, b, c equals array of 1, 2, and w. And guess what happens when you execute this line? A will equal 1, b will equal 2, and c will equal w. So this kind of simplifies your life. And who took programming 101 in college or something? Remember one of the early examples, they tell you write a small method or function to do swap. And basically you take a, assign it to a temporary variable, then put b to a, and you know that simple thing. We have now an easier way to do a swap. Suppose I have a and b, and I want to swap them. I could just do that. Is it making sense? So, all right. So, destructuring could not only apply on the declaration and assignment of variables, it could be applied on function parameters. So that we have a new syntax here. suppose you have an object book that has some different properties on it, and I have this function get ID. Notice it takes, this is actually part of the syntax. Curly bracket ID. What I'm saying here, get ID, give me an, I expect the object you pass me to have a property named ID. I don't care whatever it has, anything else, I don't care. So here you are enforcing maybe interfaces or object definition. You're gonna, if it doesn't have an ID, it will fail. So let's run this here. And oh, we need this too. So notice now, I call get ID and pass it book. It will return the ID 99, and I pass it this title and author. It will return to me the title concatenated with the author. So this is a new syntax in EcmaScript 6. It's not hard. I mean, we finished the hard parts, by the way. This is just telling you some of the interesting features of the language. What do you think will happen if I call ID with an object that doesn't have an ID? So any suggestions? It will be just undefined. I mean, ID would not be defined. Pardon?
Ratings.
I can't hear you, ma'am.
Ratings.
Ratings?
Rating, like your book rating.
Okay, yeah, that's exactly. Let's create a new function. And let's flatter our authors. We'll give them times 10. And pass it book. Okay? So clear this and run it. So trying to calculate undefined times 10, and it gives you none, not a number. Is it making sense?
What kind of benefit does this give you as opposed to just saying a.rating or a.title, a.author, just whatever?
Because here I could pass anything. I'm saying this function, ratings, I don't care what object you pass me. I just need something that has ratings on it.
What would happen if you were to output the value of arguments inside of those functions? Like what
Yeah. Arguments will be the object, will be the so.
Will you get the full object or just the values that are?
So, all right. Test, and let's here, console. It will be the whole object.
The whole object?
Yes, but don't believe me. I mean, so this is arguments, and it has is it making sense? Yeah.
So Fermi asked a question about how is putting that object filter in the arguments field different than just using a dot syntax to refer to it. I'm wondering if an error is thrown, if at the entry point of the function, the object is missing that property.
Well, the way I look at it, personally, it is more documentation. If you just pass an object, you know, JavaScript is very dynamic. It will take anything. You could pass it a string or a number. But here I'm saying I do want an object that has a field or property named ID. So it's kind of enforcing certain contract. But
It's not a contract.
I don't think it's actually enforcing so much as abstracting extracting
Yes.
the properties into
Yes, I would. Okay, I would not say enforcing. It is suggesting a contract.
It's like assigning specific parameters to the same,
Yes.
like to its namesake file.
All right. So this is deconstructing or destructuring objects. Any questions here? All right.
Does that swap only work if you have any number of objects in your array? Like could you have 3?
Yeah, let's try it. Let's try it. So okay. So I say I have a variable C 30, okay? And I say C, but how do you swap 3? I don't know.
I think you just
Put C at the beginning?
It depends on the position. So
Yes, it is position. So now if I do, suppose I do this,
Just swapping C and A.
C and A, okay? And it will be just as you expect.
So if you listed BAC, then it would essentially be a rotation.
If I do what?
If on the right-hand side was BAC, then it would essentially be a rotation.
Yes. Yes. So let's do that. So ABC here, if I say B, C, and A, it is a rotation of their values. And this show, we have to print them.
can you do console along ABC? A comma B.
Well, I could say A, comma B, comma C. That's regular, nothing here. And R here. So I huh. So it is C. I get A is getting 20. B is getting. Where's the W coming from?
I would just run it again.
Okay. So A is 20, B is 30. So no 30. So this shows the value of being unprepared with examples that the audience suggests. Hack with it. I mean, play with it. I mean, maybe it is not supported. Remember, I'm using an experimental version of Firefox. It is on. It is the nightly build here. I'm getting you the nightly build. So we could look at the standard definition of the constructing to see. Anyway.
Question.
Yes.
Over here.
Oh, sorry.
So in that last example, let's say you had an object book, and then you passed it into format title. Let's say you had another object. Can you pass it into the same format title? And what would happen if those two objects?
You mean to another argument? You mean?
And then yeah, that. And what if they both had the same keys?
If it is another argument, it's just another argument. I mean, here.
They have the same key.
But okay, let's.
Two different objects that have the same key.
But see, it will be, see, another arg. Okay. It will be just another arg. This one here is just one argument, and this is another arg.
What if the second argument was also title author?
Mm.
You passed in
That will be,
separate objects
yes,
that follow
indeed.
each other?
No, I think there will be a naming issue, naming trouble. So don't do that. Yes, but I see. Suppose your question is, suppose I pass here an argument title. But you know, you don't do that anyway. You think you have a class. I mean, when you have a function with two arguments, you don't pass it A and A, and you're just putting yourself in trouble. And this has to fail, basically.
I think the second one will override.
And I don't know what will happen here. You want to try it?
What, that you can't do it. It says you can only swap 2 variables. You can't do 3.
Oh, it's, no, we're not talking about the swapping.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, we passed that. So let's try this. First, let me Command Z here. Make sure I have some code that works before I change it. And ratings is not there. Hold on, I have something safer. Just we casted everything here, all the changes. Pardon?
Still have your line 26.
No, I always had line. Why? Oh, 26. It is here. Huh. Oh, I didn't save it. That's why. Command S here, and now cancel the change. All right. Thank you. So now, who had the question? What do you want me to play with?
Let's say you had another object. Yeah, so you've got book. Create just another object, doesn't matter. But it has another key that's called ID.
Let's say var xx equals, and it has a field called ID.
Yeah.
All right, ID, and we give it 42. All right. And you wanted to. What do you want to do now?
And then let's work off of get ID.
Uh-huh.
XX.
We don't remember. This is just an argument name. It doesn't have to be xxx, xx. Right? So I pass here x, and in get ID here I say comma xx. Right. This is what you are trying to do, and here I say console. Or no, let's do. Damn it. ID times x. Okay, or do you want me to print it by itself? I'll print it by itself. So log x. Okay. Is this what you're trying to ask about? So this will be just another argument. There is no. These are two independent arguments. Yes, that's the. I mean, somebody here suggested, asked about that. If this second argument I'm destructuring has the same field names, we'll have trouble. I mean, I think you, sir, you asked about that. Yes.
Can you name the destructor? In their spec, it looks like you can give a name to one of the arguments that you're destructuring.
I mean, no, I'm saying this object you pass has to have an ID field. You don't override it. I mean, because here, let's say we're going to destructor x, okay? So if we're going to do that, it means we're going to do that. And this is just incorrect. And you're setting yourself to fail right away.
Do you think it's expensive to pass the whole object?
Pardon?
Do you think it's relatively expensive to pass the whole object instead of just the attribute inside?
What is the reference? It doesn't really matter too much. You are not copying it. You're passing a reference to it. Whether it is referencing an object this big or that big, it is just a reference. Okay. Shall I go to next slide or next example? Okay. So we always knew how to define objects in JavaScript. So look at line 5. This is standard way. I'm defining a property named A with a value of 1. However, look at line 6. I'm saying there's a property whose name is P and its value is also P. So this is equivalent to saying P colon P. So this is just a shorthand. Okay. Another way, another addition is we have what's called computed properties. So far in JavaScript, the key was always a string. Basically, what you have in JSON, the key is always a string. So, and the string is specifically literal. It is specified. However, here I'm saying the key is a computed value. And what do you think will be the value of this key if we print the object obj?
B6.
It will be B6. So that's another addition. And so now, if you want to define a function that is a member of your object, this is the new syntax, line 9. So originally, the way we used to have it, we'll say something like that. Say, right? This is the old way. So now we have this shorthand. Personally, I'm not too thrilled about it, but it is available. I'm trying to make you aware of it, so when you look at JavaScript examples, you don't think there's a typo. So, and now if I print obj, let's print it and see what happens. Notice A is as expected, P is 42, B is, B6 has a value of computed property, and there's a function, blah, blah, blah. So it just kind of simplified your syntax. I mean, with EcmaScript 6, I anticipate you end up typing less code. All right. And our last example is function. They added support for default parameters. So look at the function address. It takes 3 arguments: city, state, and country. And I could say the state has a default value and the country has a default value. So if I call address and pass it Dayton, Ohio, I'm from Dayton, it will be by default the country USA. And if I call the same function and pass it just Detroit, it will assume the default is Michigan and the country is USA. So is it making sense? Default arguments?
What's the argument array when you pass just the address Detroit?
It will be the 3 arguments with the values, the default values.
Are you sure?
I'm pretty sure, but don't believe me. Let's try it.
Yeah, let's try it.
We have nothing here to do except play. Okay. And I should have put it in here. No, here. So arguments, Dayton, Ohio, and so,
First time, second time.
say it again. So here it is Dayton. I don't see. Oh.
You didn't call it with nothing.
I just want to know if the default arguments.
So let me simplify the example here. I'm getting myself confused. So the first call, this line here is what we got from console log arguments. It has the first argument Dayton, second argument Ohio, and I cannot get it to show them. Oh, so it doesn't. I guess it doesn't return, and I was totally wrong.
I read about that somewhere. I was wondering if that was
Yes. Yes.
It kind of makes default arguments somewhat useless.
So. Another feature added is the rest parameters. So I could define, say, a family that has father, mother, and bunch of children, and using this syntax. And here this is an example. I called the family function with Bill and Bell, A, X, and B, and let's run it here so you see what I'm. So it has 3 children. The point I'm trying to show you here is number of children is not specified. Now you could have used arguments to not use anything, father, mother, blah, 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 but this makes your code easier. Is it making sense?
So do the dots have to do with the number of arguments?
Yes, dots is like variable number of arguments. So this here is an array. Basically, children is an array, and is a proper array, by the way, I forgot to mention. Like, you know, arguments is not a real array. It just somewhat behaves like an array, while children is actually an array. So you could deal with it, treat it as loop on it any way you do with an array. All right, I think I'm done with my examples. Go back to the slides. So if you want some resources to learn about it, these are some here. The second one is by our friend Brian Genesio. He created a really cool site, learnharmony.org. Just go there and play. It allows you to, in the browser, experiment with EcmaScript 6. So without, I mean, you notice here I copy and paste, and I'm using the latest version of Firefox. What he has, it allows you to run it with any generic browser, and you don't have the latest. And he's using a library that compiles the code from EcmaScript 6 into 5 and runs it. And these are other examples here. OK. Any other questions? Yes?
You talked about environment support. Is there any support plan for Node? Or?
Yeah, there are some libraries to add it on the server.
Okay.
For example, 6 to 5. And there are other ones. There are several libraries for Node.
Okay.
But again, nothing is complete yet. Firefox among browsers is the best, and 6 to 5 is probably the highest support for the server side or for translation.
I got two questions.
Yeah.
The first one may be very trivial, but why aren't you using semicolons to terminate lines?
Oh, I could. This is personal choice. I'm lazy.
Okay, so that has to do with ES6.
No, I'm lazy, and I'm trying to give you examples without any side effects.
The second question is, before I came here, I was reading a blog post about ES6 modules.
Uh-huh.
And the argument was that that was the one feature browsers should implement.
Uh-huh.
Because the ES6 module, there's through loader, prototype, translate, you can specify on the fly ASM, ES7, CoffeeScript, and as part of the loading process, it will just translate it if you give it the.
You mean translate from Coffee to JavaScript?
Yeah, but it's part of the normal browser loading.
Uh-huh. That's.
Apparently part of the ES6 modules.
Well, I know we could load them, but I don't know what the translation automatically by JavaScript.
If you supply loader.prototype,
Uh-huh.
translate.
Uh-huh. I don't know. I don't know about that feature. And notice I didn't show you any example with load module or classes because Firefox doesn't support them. And if you look at them, I didn't think they are too hard to figure them on your own. They are really important, but Firefox doesn't support them. And I didn't want to run another environment here. Anything else? All right. Everything you saw here is available on GitHub. Sorry, here. Just get it if you like. And that's it. Thank you.